There we go. So I need to turn that down. Getting set up over here to do yet another. 2 days in a row. Of course, I had some issues yesterday. But 2 days in a row, I'm going to do an Ask Me Anything episode of the podcast. And today, hopefully we don't have any issues. But for now, let's go ahead and roll that intro. How's it going, everybody? Glad that you can come over here and join me and bouncing passed out guy. Always a lovely favorite to the crowd. He just bounces and stays passed out. It's the gift that keeps on giving, really. And he changes colors, so it's interactive. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into it here. And I'm going to go over some topics that I have pre-picked out beforehand. And I would urge individuals, if you're watching, please send me some questions, and if I don't know the answer, I will answer it by looking it up or saying I don't know, which is what a lot of people should probably say anyway. So let's go ahead and make sure that this is all shared to my page, etc., etc. Here we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on the first topic here now that I have that shared. Hopefully that did not drop me from the stream. Let me make sure here. I'm really kind of skittish because I'm not really sure what... Let's see if we're still live here. There we go. We got a live update that we were shared. So that's a good thing. And it looks like I'm still going. Great. So I'll go ahead and minimize that for now. And let's start off with some good news. We'll go ahead and switch on over here. Thanks for joining us. Oh no. I have to log in for this? I'll pass on that. Let's do another one. What else do we got over here? A bunch of topics to pick from. How's everybody doing tonight? Here's some news. So the Biden administration just announced that it will not issue visas to diversity visa recipients who were denied them because of Trump's Muslim ban. Ooh, okay. Instead of restoring this opportunity, President Biden dusted off Trump's close sign and locked the door. Well, maybe that's not good news. Sounds to me like Biden's doing some naughty naughties. Seems like that's not the best thing to do. Says it requires each year selections to finish the process and get their visas by the end of the fiscal year. Huh. Okay. What's another one we got here? We got one from President Biden again here. So, President Joe Biden rescinds Donald Trump ban on diversity training about systemic racism. I'd say that's a decent thing. So he reversed his predecessor's diversity training ban that restricted the federal government and its contractors from using curriculum that examined systemic racism, white privilege, and other race and gender bias issues. In the weeks ahead, I will be reaffirming, and this is, I'm guessing, Yeah, that's Biden saying this. I'll be reaffirming the federal government's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, building up the work we started in the Obama-Biden administration. That's why I'm rescinding the previous administration's harmful ban on diversity and sensitivity training. Biden said in remarks delivered Tuesday. Unity and healing must begin with understanding and truth, not ignorance and lies. So I really like that statement. I think that, unless we really start paying attention to this issue that is white supremacy, we aren't going to fix the issue. We're just going to keep having problems over and over again. I don't think that the issue of shootings is necessarily a gun issue. I think that it's a issue of culture around guns. And I think that we need to change that culture, and we also need to probably work on some mental health regulations. But ultimately, I think that this is a step in a good direction. Need to be aware of the problem before we can really step off and do anything about it. For all those that might be joining here, or if you're joining late, you can also check me out over on Twitch at the Smoogley. Then, of course, I will be streaming to Facebook, and then I will make sure and edit anything that needs to be edited in this episode, and I'll be posting that to YouTube as well. So just be aware of that. Let's go ahead and switch to another story here. We already talked, I think, the other day, but I do want to retouch on this because I think that people are going to get a little hyped up about it. So let's get it in closer. People have been talking quite a bit about voting laws, and I'm a little concerned that there's some bad information going around, or people aren't fully up on what exactly is going on there. So let me try to find this real quick. Because ultimately, what it comes down to is there's just really not any solid evidence that there's voter fraud going on. And it really doesn't make any sense that individuals are getting upset about this ultimately. We really need to be careful about what we do in regards to changing the voting laws, because I'm trying to find this. Where the heck is it? Here we go. So this one is from the Brennan Center, talking about the myth of voter fraud, and really want to make sure that that gets covered. I'm not sure if it was overly covered yesterday because my stream kind of stopped in the middle there, but ultimately, when it really comes down to it, there is not voter fraud going on, and it's incident rates of 0.003% and 0.0025% is what we're looking at for voter fraud. So all of these laws that are going out by primarily GOP, / Republican representatives and elected officials just don't make sense based on the data. Because I'm just going to have to say, if we're worried about a 0.003% chance of somebody, this voter fraud going on, and of course this was done from 2 studies, one in 2012 and one in 2016, and I'm sure, they'll add to the study in this recent election, is that there's really not any voter fraud going on. Government investigations agree voter fraud is rare. Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, a longtime proponent of voter suppression efforts, argued before state lawmakers that his office needed special power to prosecute voter fraud because he knew of 100 such cases in his state. After being granted these powers, he has brought 6 such cases, which are only 4 have been successful. The Secretary has also testified about his review of 84 million votes cast in 22 states, which yielded 14 instances of fraud referred for prosecution, which amounts to 0.000000017% fraud rate. Why are we even wasting our time with this right now? And the answer is because we don't really 100% know, but it seems like a certain political party is trying to rig, things into their favor. They're playing the system like any other sophist, and they're trying to play things to their, convictions. Looks like I wasn't on live scene there. But ultimately, you can check this out from the Brennan Center. I'll go ahead and put that information into... Wow, I can't put info into a multi-chat. I'll put this into Facebook chat so that people can check it out. Moving along, let's find another spot here. So we had some issues with, just real quick, touching on this real quick, is there were some issues with the Supreme Court, and it said they seemed ready on Tuesday to uphold 2 election restrictions in Arizona to make it harder to challenge all sorts of limits on voting around the nation. And ultimately what they were doing is they're saying that they would like to, let's see, the last 3 months. If I remember correctly here it is. So the immediate action for the justices was whether 2 Arizona measures ran afoul of the 1965 law, which it applies to voting restrictions that have a disproportionate impact on members of minority groups. And looking here, several members of the court's consecutive majority, their action that they proposed is one of the measures requires election officials to discard ballots cast at the wrong precinct. The other makes it a crime for campaign workers, community activists, and most other people to collect ballots for delivery to polling places, a practice critics call ballot harvesting, which they're trying to say that they're holding onto these ballots and then like casting them multiple times or something. It's pretty bizarre. But ultimately, I just want to kind of make something clear, is for all of those people that really seem to think that there's this weird conspiracy going on and that there's all of this voter fraud going on, you really don't have much of a leg to stand on. If you make the same arguments as, the NRA does, when looking at the FBI crime database, that not many people are committing fraud, and in the case of the FBI database, not many people are dying in comparison to other forms of death, to shootings, for example, then you could even further use the same argument for the voter fraud situation. There's not any voter fraud happening. There hasn't been a history of voter fraud like what's been claimed, and we need to really just drop this. It doesn't make any sense to even be mad about this or to continue advocating for further voter restrictions or voter suppression laws, essentially. It's not part of the democratic system that, we want to have. It doesn't even benefit the people that try to claim that, well, they're going to be at a disadvantage. Well, if you change these laws, you're going to put both parties really at a disadvantage because you're just going to ruin the system. You're just going to make it so laws don't happen the way that the popular vote happens, ultimately. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. One thing I'm rather critical of, I would say that I'm critical of, is there's been a number of, let's see, airstrikes. So I want to actually read through all this because there's a lot to take from it. So let's go ahead and go over back to the live scene here. The United States military Thursday, February 25th, carried out airstrikes. Excuse the sound, I'm going to open a soda here. Carried out airstrikes targeting Iranian-backed militias in Syria in retaliation for rocket attacks on U.S. targets in Iraq, the first military action undertaken by the Biden administration. Excuse me. The strikes reportedly resulted in multiple deaths, a grave violation of international law, according to Notre Dame Law School professor Mary Ellen O'Connell, a respected expert on international law and the use of force. The United Nations Charter makes absolutely clear that the use of military force on the territory of a foreign sovereign state is lawful only in response to an armed attack on the defending state, for which the target state is responsible, O'Connell said. None of those elements is met in the Syria strike. There's no right of reprisal, right to use military force, or for deterrence, right to attack Iran on the territory of Syria, or right to use major military force in response to the type of violence that occurred last week. She said, President Biden has done much to restore the United States' standing in the world in a short time following the chaotic years of the Trump administration. But among Trump's lawless actions were reprisal attacks in Syria. In 2017-2018, President Donald Trump ordered dozens of Tomahawk missile strikes on Syria in retaliation for chemical weapons attacks, but O'Connell said that international law clearly and unreservedly prohibits the use of military force for retaliation, reprisal, or deterrence. I just want to know why do we keep making this focus on this war in the Middle East? I thought we were supposed to be stopping this. We're supposed to be pulling our troops out. We're supposed to be done. And it seems like every presidential candidate that comes up, whether they be Democrat or Republican, they want to just keep this going. And I'm just saying, why are we spending money continually in this war for where we didn't find what we were originally going there for? And I mean, I guess that it might be nice to have a forward operating base if we're trying to stop terrorism, but ultimately I think that it's a little strange of a response when we're the ones that caused that terrorism in the first place. It's a weird situation where, we have multiple problems. There's the immigration issue from the South, is where people are really worried, the most right now, especially since we had how many GOP senators just sitting there. Let's go back over here. We had how many GOP senators going over to a border crossing of some sort where every single year, it's not a secret, every single year there's an uptick of people that are crossing the border whenever it starts getting warm from the winter. And GOP senators decided to go down to some picked border crossing and then try to raise a stink about this. Well, this ties into the same subject here. So we caused this problem. We're the ones that caused the problem in the Middle East in the first place. We did it in the 80s. And we had an attack on our soil, which was not acceptable, but ultimately, why is it that we're just now cleaning up this issue? You would think that if we would have done this operation over in Afghanistan, which of course is going to affect the markets and everything around Afghanistan, which, Iraq and all of that is all in the same place. So why did we not take care of it then? Why did we wait until a 2001 attack where we knew that the Muslim world and that Middle Eastern world was pissed at us because of all this stuff? We have intelligence in that area. Some of this stuff was known beforehand, but still actions were not taken. And now we're just throwing our servicemen and women over into this continued war effort. And now we're doing airstrikes over in Syria. For what? To protect who? Not us. It's not something for us. We should be out of there. If you want to protect us, don't do airstrikes on Syria. Get our troops out of there, and then they're well protected. Let's look at another one. Still really no questions over in chat. Like I said, I will be prioritizing questions. So I can keep talking about these different... I've got about 50 different stories I just copy-pasted into a Google Doc. And that's really where I'm at right now. So if you have questions in the chat that you want to go, or points to rebut anything that I'm talking about, feel free to show them there. Okay, so it looks like Jesse says he'll be home in 30 minutes. Well, I'll still be on, Jesse. Send your questions over chat. Okay. So, another kind of somewhat good thing. Let's go back over to our live scene here. Another good thing. U.S. extends new START nuclear treaty with Russia for 5 years. Now, I have not read this article, so I'm going to try to skim through this and read some. It doesn't look like it's that long of an article. Let's form an opinion. Let's have a discussion. The United States and Russia have extended a crucial nuclear arms control treaty until 2026. I mean, I think that's good. This depends on what the details are. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Wednesday the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, or New START, is the last nuclear treaty between two countries and was set to expire February 5th. Wow, last second. Jeez. This is February 3rd that this article was posted. Renewing the agreement was one of the first national security challenges facing President Joe Biden's administration, especially during times of tension. Verifiable limits on Russia's intercontinental range nuclear weapons are vitally important, Blinken said in a statement, noting that Russia has remained in compliance since 2010 when the treaty was signed. Extending the treaty made the world safer, quote unquote, he said, adding that unconstrained nuclear competition would endanger us all. The move was welcomed by the Russian embassy in Washington, which said in a statement that the treaty was a cornerstone of international security. Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a bill extending the treaty Friday after both houses of Russian parliament voted unanimously to extend it. Well, at least that's good. New START makes it possible to maintain the transparency and predictability of strategic relations between Russia and the United States and to support global strategic stability, the Kremlin said in a statement at the time. Signed in 2010 by Barack Obama and Dmitry Medvedev of Russia, the agreement placed the lowest limits in decades on American and Russian deployed nuclear warheads and the land and submarine-based missiles and bombers that deliver them. The Trump administration's efforts to secure a shorter arms control agreement with Russia that included a freeze on all nuclear warheads and the future inclusion of China immediately ended in stalemate. Okay, well, I'd say that's some good news. Something's happening. Let's see what we got going on. Get on out of here, Washington Post. Uh-oh, is it going to force me? Yep. I forgot Washington Post, man. Jeez. What else do we got? Still accepting, prioritizing questions in the chat. Want to ask me any question? It could be about anything. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know and look it up. If I do know, I'll let you know my opinion. Let's see what this is. Let's see what this is. Biden proposes $15 minimum wage. Will the federal minimum wage go up $15 per hour? If Biden gets his way, it will. And this is talking about his stimulus package, so I guess this is a little old. But ultimately, I do think that the minimum wage will help in the short term, but just to kind of talk about this subject, I mean, I don't really feel like I want to read this because it's a little bit outdated, and of course it got denied by filibuster. So anyhow, I do think that it'll help in the short term, but I am also acknowledging that in the long term, we're really not going to help the situation overly well. I mean, in the long term, because inflation is going to play a factor, and then we're also going to have another issue of automation and AI, which is a part of automation. That's going to start taking people's jobs, and they're not going to have any way of getting income. So, I mean, even having this $15 minimum wage, it's not going to solve all of our issues, and it's really honestly kind of the bare minimum. I mean, even as a technical professional, I can say that wages in the United States are nowhere close to what you would get, say in Switzerland is one of the, the ones that I know of specifically. I mean, and even still, working for a company, you can get a broad range of salary anyway. And a lot of the way that just the U.S. wage market and, the way that jobs are, generated and managed in the U.S. and, paid in the U.S., it's not really on like a value type of system. They just give you a wage, and then it's typically like, well, sometimes I might get a merit wage, and if you have a good manager, then good on you. That's good that they pay attention and give merit wages in this, but ultimately, most of the time, in my experience, you have to kind of just complain and say, I need a wage because of this, that, and the other. And then they can just either approve or deny whatever you're saying. And ultimately, I really feel like somebody's wage should be based upon their qualification in a job. And ultimately, on top of that, that then puts the onus, if it's going to be a fair system, for somebody, some sort of a body, to then state what is the procedure and the qualification path forward for each one of those tasks that's required for that job, and then base a dollar amount upon getting qualified in all of these different tasks. So for example, in a simple example, if you are a cashier, you're running the cash register, of course, you want to have the skill to be able to scan items, and there might be a wealth of items. There might be different procedures for each one of those items. And you need to be able to close or, open up your cash register for the day, and you need to be able to close it without making the accountant, pull their hair out. But to make it, look much more specific here, you wouldn't then be also expected to like balance the books for the business as a cashier, because you, for one, would need a qualification on that. Hopefully the business would require that. I mean, I don't think I, as a business owner, would want just some unqualified person that has no idea what they're doing balance my business books. And granted, in some cases, if it's a sole proprietorship or a small business, it's probably just the business owner that's going to do it. But you get my point, is the cashier is not going to be expected to have the qualification to balance books. And they're also not going to be qualified to fix the cash register in the event that the cash register is broken. Now, if they want to get that qualification, maybe that would make them a more valuable cashier. I don't know. Definitely open to that. But you get my point, is every single job should have this very clear and defined qualification. And it should be a very clear and defined minimum for that, minimum wage. And it should be a very clear defined cap. You know, we're not going to probably pay a cash register attendant if they're just only ever attending the cash register. There's going to be a maximum that we're going to pay that person to do that job, because once again, it doesn't require that many qualified tasks. Now, if that person wanted to have the opportunity to go to something else and say, learn how to balance the books and then use that to transition to another job or whatever, I think that those opportunities should just be offered. If we're in a system in which things are supposed to be, we're supposed to have equity across the board, then all people should have the opportunity. And this is where, once again, the education system, the problem with education right now gets looped into this. The problem of wage gets looped into this. The problem of workers' rights gets looped into this. There's no reason. This is something that the government is already managing in many different many different ways. But the way that we have this system set up, they don't have really any control over these. Like, they're just allowing essentially the free market to decide what is fair and what isn't fair. And quite frankly, it's not fair. It's not what an actual fair system is. And ultimately, if we're trying to create the most fair and moral system for every single person to prosper, not just a few people, and not to the point where nobody's able to have any reason to strive or anything like that. It's not like some dystopian hellscape that we're talking about here. We're talking about very similar to what our system currently is, except we're actually going to hold these representatives accountable for the money that they spend. And we're not going to have people lobbying to our representatives either. So there's so many problems that we have right now that there's not going to be one single thing that's going to fix all of this. And that's maybe a little bit of something that I kind of want to shift here. So we were talking about the minimum wage, we're talking about work, we're talking about automation and how that's going to affect jobs. I'm getting kind of annoyed that every time I bring up like a proposed solution for an issue, to mainly just for conversation. I mean, do I think any of this is going to actually get implemented? Probably not, but I bet plenty of other social philosophers also thought the same thing. But the thing that they were concerned about, and the thing that's useful, is they were talking about it, and they continue to talk about it. So, like I said, I'm not like, I don't have some delusion of grandeur where I think I'm just going to submit this and it's just going to fix all of the world's problem in one single fell swoop. That's not the case. This is a very dynamic situation. And ultimately, you can't really fix the work issue unless you fix the lobbying issue, because these laws are never going to get passed if ultimately corporations are in control of the legislators. So this is going to be a pretty big issue. It's not going to happen quickly. It's going to have to be like a 10-year, 15-year plan. But ultimately, what I would hope is through discussion and hashing all of this out, we can use even real-world examples of different countries that have done different things, and we can come up with a better solution for what we have. I mean, the solution that we currently have, it's not good. It's not acceptable. We are paying more than anybody else on Earth for taxes and that. We're supposedly supposed to be the the top of the world and the most wealthy country in the world. Well, that means that we're paying the most taxes. And maybe as far as a percentage, it might be more in other areas, a percentage of somebody's income. But as far as like a dollar amount, I'd be willing to bet, and correct me if I'm wrong, throw it in there in chat. Maybe that's a comment that somebody can disagree on. But do we pay the most dollar amount per person in taxes in the world? I would have to say it makes sense, but I'm not going to look it up. I'll let chat do that one on me. But ultimately, we pay a lot of money in taxes, and that money is commonly misused. It's unbelievable how misused it is. And the to go over and make this argument of, well, because our money is misused, then we just can't trust government with anything, is not also the solution. It's not, well, that's a problem and it looks like a can of worms, I'm going to bail out. And then you just pop your chute and you bail. That's not the way it should be either. Just because it's a tough problem doesn't mean it's not solvable. And I think that ultimately the way to solve this massive spending issue, to kind of shift gears a little bit, which also plays into this whole minimum wage, education, and all these other things, is you have to fix this corruption issue. And that starts with two things that will potentially fix, if not drastically improve the situation with corruption. The first thing is term limits. We don't need people to be in a term for more than 8 years. I don't care if you're the president. I don't care if you're a senator. I don't care if you're a representative. And I don't care if you're a Supreme Court justice. I would be willing to budge a little bit on the Supreme Court justice, but to have lifetime appointments anymore, especially in the Supreme Court, I don't think that is acceptable. And it just opens the floodgates for corruption. And beyond this, you have to get rid of lobbying. I don't want, and we should not want, corporations getting their grubby little fingers into our governmental system. The only way that they can get their grubby little fingers into the governmental system is if they work through liaisons, and it's essentially special watchdogs are watching it, where there's, just no chance there's going to be watchdogs, and their whole entire purpose in life, their job will be to watch and make sure that no corruption or no corrupt bullcrap is happening. I think that AOC, when she brought up all of the different ways that our governmental system can be corrupted, she only was just scratching the surface. It needs to be like some very serious and stark change, because it's already off the rails. It's not even like, oh, you're overreacting and, it's not off the rails yet, but it's probably a good thing to look at. No, this is already off the rails. This is right now the time for change to potentially prevent something more catastrophic in the future. But ultimately, I think that treating our citizens essentially like contractors, and not having this whole looped in thing with private unions saving the day. It just doesn't make any sense to me. There's tons and tons of examples about government unions out there, and I think that there's some good things to take away, but there's also some very bad things to take away. And I don't want, the confusion to, once again, every time you bring up union, a lot of people seem to just go to these, very common things in American unions, specifically. American unions, specifically in the Midwest. And I would just say I've had not great experiences working at union facilities. Sure, it wasn't a complete hellscape, but it also wasn't the best place. It just wasn't. And I would say in every single case, for me personally, I've worked far better places that are not union than I have at union plants. And here's the reason that I say that. It's because a lot of the unions put in these ridiculous restrictions that just blocks any, productive, blocks you from being as productive as you can be. And it also allows people in their tribalistic nature to put lines in the sand and have essentially a leg to stand on, quote unquote, to not do work, essentially. I mean, there's been tons of times that, and I'm not going to go into each one of those examples, that I've had union operators actually vandalize equipment so that they didn't have to do anything. And then, of course, they don't have to, no matter how easy the fix is, they don't have to do anything. So they'll quite literally unscrew like a metal plate that's being used on a door to detect whether the door is closed or not by some magnetic sensing device. And they'll unscrew the plate and let it stick to the magnet so that it's always on, and then just sit there for who knows how long until maintenance comes around to go over and fix it. And like I said, this is anecdotal evidence, and it's just an example of what I've seen personally. But I have also worked at places in which, hey, it was okay. It wasn't necessarily bad, and it was a union facility, but still, just other places, there was way more work that got done. I don't feel like somebody was overworked or anything like that, or people were just always worried about, getting fired or something like that. It was just less work got done at the union plant, quite frankly. Yeah, thanks for mentioning, Jesse. Do you work over at a union plant over there? He says he deals with these doors daily. But ultimately, I'm not against unions specifically. I just think that private unions are just not good, and I don't think that they generate just. I've seen so many bad actors in this situation that the good actors don't ever really come out for me. I mean, we've got people that are just showing up to do a job like I would at any other job, and hey, they're okay at their job, and some of them are good. I don't think that there was ever a case where somebody just literally blew my mind at how good they were, and they were working for a union as opposed to not working for a union. But I can say there have been people that have blown my mind on their technical knowledge and how they do their job, and they, in every case, have not worked for a union. Now, that's, once again, anecdotal evidence. I'm not like bringing that to the table and saying that, haha, it proves that unions are crap, but I do think that there's something to say about like the way that the private union is structured makes it so that there's an incentive to not be as productive as on a non-union setup, whatever that may be, whether it's a company, an organization. If you're like a contractor that works for a union, you work as a carpenter or a union electrician or whatever. I'm just saying, I'm not seeing this claim that is always coming out to here. So Jesse says, certain unions such as mine are not effective. It provides a place where people are held to terrible standards and ridiculed for good work, as others in the union use loopholes and bullshit excuses to avoid criticism and a write-up. And that's exactly what I've experienced, Jesse, in the majority of my time working in union plants. And I'm just saying, I wish that it didn't have to be that way. I think that quite a few different aspects of unions are, good, providing, bargaining power to get good wages and good benefits. That makes sense. But once again, why do we need a private industry for that when there's examples of countries who are, economically successful that don't really need these private unions? They just mandate it. I mean, it's the same thing as like OSHA. Prior to OSHA, we had unions to tell us that things were safe and that our workers aren't going to do that or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden the government stepped in and, created OSHA and all this. And now OSHA's the one running the show. And I'm just kind of a little perplexed as like, what is this union providing now that, the government doesn't provide? Well, once again, they're selling this, we can have bargaining power to negotiate situation. And negotiate can be from your wage to benefits to whether or not you're fired, etc. And once again, that's another thing that the government can step in on, and we can do the exact same thing. And it doesn't really require any more oversight than what we're already doing. They're already requiring so Jesse says, yes, but when people abuse the union to exploit certain areas and do less the others for the same pay, the unions become ineffective. And that's where, once again, another or something that we see a lot in unions is this seniority system where essentially you can just kind of exist in a job for 15 years or 20 years or whatever, and you just get magically more pay for that. I mean, it doesn't reflect any of your actual skill. It just reflects that you've been there for a while. And that's what I'm saying is like a system like that doesn't work. And I'm very critical of unions for that, is that I will never in my life work for a union, period. And in fact, I worked at a union plant and did not pay union dues. I refused to, because it doesn't make any sense to be a person who has, adequate skills or whatever, and I'm not judged on my qualification, I'm judged on my seniority. That, in my opinion, stifles growth. And like just what Jesse is saying, it just, the people that are there the longest know the rules the best and are best protected, so then they have more incentive to abuse. And I'm just really not for that. Really not for that. I think that the term union needs to change. The what people assume is involved with unions needs to change. And I think that it needs to not be a private industry, because there's just no reason that we should be rewarding some private company for doing what our government is essentially supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be protecting our citizens. We live in a society in which if you lose your job, you better have a bunch of money sitting in the bank, or you better, like, we're just continuously in this situation. And many people live by this, where if you lose your job, you might lose your house. They don't have time to just go look for another job. And, looking for a job while they're still working is also really difficult because of strict hours. There's people that work, like one job I very regularly was putting in 60 to 70 hours a week. And I know that people do more, but that's a lot of hours to work. I don't care what anybody says. So try finding a job, a separate job, when you're working 60 to 70 hours a week. That's a tactic that companies do to try, in high turnover companies, they try to just keep people working so that they can't possibly, move on. So Jesse says seniority system works great as far as job bidding process, but doesn't help as far as letting lazy asses ride the wave while others try to cop out of work through other means. You're correct. But yeah, and I just think that there's got to be just better ways. We can't just sit on something and say, well, this is how it is, and we're just sticking with it. It seems like a lot of these unions haven't really had any major progressive change to help their actual constituents, the people that are paying these union dues. I don't know, it's frustrating. But we've talked about this for a while. Jesse, you said you had some other questions. So I'll find another topic over here, but I'll just wait for whatever questions that you might have. If you have some previously, or you have something made up, or you have a particular topic here. Let's see. Here's something further on the minimum wage while we're waiting. Let me go back to the live scene here. So this is from 2019. It's still relevant. It's only a couple of years ago. But 2/3 of Americans favor raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. And then by a wide margin, Americans say they favor raising the minimum wage, $15 an hour, but there's a deep partisan divide in views of this proposed policy, a version of which recently passed the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives, though it is unlikely to be taken up by the GOP-controlled Senate. Okay, so he's just wanting to change topics in the debate. So I think that I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but ultimately, I mean, this is a very popular policy. And I think, once again, it's going to help in the short term, but I do take the opposition's points in saying, or at least nobody's said this today, or Jesse hasn't quite said this, but I think we've talked about it before, is that inflation is ultimately going to kind of negate this, and we're really kind of on the very, if the curve is over here, we're trying to go up this way, we're like following the curve here. We're kind of riding the very back of the wave and not actually meeting a wage in which people can live without taking like a major duress or anything like that. So I just think that we need to come up with something better. There's got to be something better that we can do than just this, wage hiking. I mean, we're just going to go and keep inflating and keep inflating. I mean, is that achievable in the long term? I mean, we feasibly going to be just like spending, $1,000 on or I guess it wouldn't be that extreme, but are we going to spend $10 on a cup of coffee in about 15 or 20 years? Or like, I'm just confused as to how, the long term is going to work. We're only really fixing the short term, and this is only like a less than 5 years fix by raising it to $50 an hour. It needs to be up in that $20 range for us to really be enacting, significant change and trying to bolster the middle class, and maybe, make it so that the lower class is much smaller. This is a pretty tough topic. So Jesse says minimum wage should adjust to reflect inflation and consumer costs. We don't disagree there, but most believe that, give me more money, but don't believe business has the right to raise costs based on wage. And I would say that there is the possibility, obviously, for the wage, or excuse me, the products to raise in cost, but there is data that suggests that that's not as big of a deal. So like in Denmark, let's see, Denmark, McDonald's price list. So if we look over here, McDonald's workers in Denmark make $22 an hour, yet let's see what the Big Mac costs. What does the Big Mac cost? Here we go. So The Economist says that a Big Mac costs 76 cents less in Denmark than the United States at market exchange rate. And I think there's even, on top of this, there's like, I think it was $13 an hour. Let's see, Seattle, minimum wage effect here. I don't know if this is necessarily a great, let's see, minimum wage. This is probably just going to show us so there, for large employers, is $16.39 an hour, and it looks like Okay, so the minimum wage is going to hike to $15 an hour in 2021, but last year for small businesses it looked like if you make tips you get 13 something an hour, but if you don't make tips, wow, so they're going above and beyond. So Jesse asked, what is their level of automation opposed to ours? I mean, what do you mean by what is their level of automation? What is this? Phys.org. Let me look and see who these guys are first before. Hey, there's some nanotechnology here. I might look at this website later. About us is what I'm looking for. Who are these people? Who are you? Science X Network. Key editors. Okay. Do they run computer terminals for orders? I mean, that's a good question. Are you talking about on oh, okay, in Denmark? So let's find this Denmark. Denmark. Let's just look into McDonald's. Whoop. McDonald's. There we go. It's the New York Times. Do we have any videos of a Denmark's McDonald's? When is this video?
So Bernie Sanders has said this about Scandinavia. They make $20 an hour at McDonald's. You mean they didn't hire machines to do it when it hit $15 an hour? I wonder why they didn't do that.
It sounds like the workers are empowered to advocate for their needs. Like he said, they have unions, and that's why they make $20 an hour at McDonald's.
So it's not. So by the way, their $20 an hour wage at McDonald's, that is not mandated by the government through a minimum wage. That is negotiated.
Yeah, Jesse, just to comment on your. So if I run so Jesse says, if I run an American McDonald's with 15 employees per shift and they run the same shift with automation with say 8 physical employees, and the wage gap is explained, we're behind on automation, and many people don't realize that. I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily what's going on there, but ultimately, so if you're going to use that argument for the minimum wage, then how do you suggest when we just automate out all of the jobs and the minimum wage doesn't mean jack shit? What do we do then? I mean, I'm all for automating jobs, so you don't have to convince me against it, but ultimately, if we're talking about this subject and you're saying, well, they're just going to get fewer workers and fewer workers with this minimum wage, well, yeah, you're right. They're going to automate it out. So what's the solution for that? What's the solution for when we automate everything out, except for jobs to work on the automation and jobs to put in more automation? People got to make ends meet. You know, they gotta eat. So what do we do then? Let's watch the rest of this video while you answer.
Negotiated by strong unions, just as Hank said, strong unions. So you don't have to do that.
And when the economy serves everybody, when everybody gets to participate in the profits, it means that the people who sweep the floors should be paid an amount of money that they can use to live off of. It's not a complicated or a radical idea at all.
Well, it means that if you're making a profit, maybe you share some of that profit with the people who actually generate that profit for you, right? So that's what that, and turns out everybody can make money.
Yeah.
Somebody can make a living wage selling hamburgers, working at a restaurant, and the person who owns the restaurant also makes money. Right now in America, we have the people who own the restaurants making lots of money, and the people who work there are poverty wage. That's what we have in America. Poverty wages at one of the richest they make billions of dollars, fast food. They make billions. So those employees at McDonald's generating billions of dollars in profit for those fast food joints, they get slave wages. Go
They
ahead.
often rely on government programs to subsidize their needs, like.
So Jesse says that's where the argument gets skewed. Where do we draw the line? And I think that ultimately we're we're running into the same argument that I talked with Cody about, and on that, on my discussion with Cody Weber, is we need to realize that every single human being Right, so Jesse says, I run an automated Frito-Lay warehouse. I understand where this goes one way or another, but a minimum wage for jobs meant for entry-level college kids or high school part-time and a living wage for an adult is where people don't seem to understand the difference. Everyone deserves a living. I wish I had a way to add audio. You could join up in my Discord if you want. I think you've been in my Discord before. But I just joined into the Discord. I can drag you up if you want to join. I'll put the link in the chat. Let's see. Just a second. I'm getting this. Excuse me. I just put the Discord info in Facebook chat. But anyhow, so ultimately, I think that we need to start really looking at this wage issue. Says I'll send my ad. Okay. Well, anyhow, what I'm trying to get at here is every single person needs to be seen as valuable, and it doesn't matter whether there needs to be this base value in which people are given by their governmental system. And ultimately, the thought is, hey, maybe they're not as valuable. Well, don't give them like a humongous wage then. Obviously there's got to be a bottom somewhere. And if we're automating out all of the jobs, you can't then assume that there's going to be enough jobs to make up for it. I mean, a lot of people are saying that automation is somehow going to generate jobs, but ultimately, if people aren't going into that specific profession for the job or to learn what they need to be able to do that job, then there's just going to be a bunch of jobs sitting there and a bunch of people that, aren't willing to go over and get the qualifications needed to, work with the market. I mean, we're closing the scope of the market by quite a bit when it comes to this job market by automating all of it out. And we really need to do something about this. We really need to start thinking about, looks like somebody might have joined here. We need to start thinking about what does it mean to be an American where there's not any jobs available, because right now we don't have the problem. But if we're proactive about it, we can then fix it without having some major upset like we regularly do. It just seems like we regularly have this, upset, or we're reactively trying to unscrew up some sort of a thing that's happened, or the thing that's been happening for a long period of time. And I'm just Bruiserker. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Add. What? How do I add somebody on here? I'll just send you on yeah, I'll just do that. I'll send it to you over Messenger. Let's see, I gotta send this over to Jesse so he can join up. But if you're just joining up or you're, catching this later, I'm prioritizing chat for questions and for conversation. So anything that you want to talk about, go ahead and throw that into chat, and I will prioritize chat conversation. Anything. Doesn't matter what it is. If I don't know, I'll look it up. If I do know, I'll try to answer the question as best I can, given my set of knowledge. Okay, I sent that to Jesse, so we might get another person over here, get some interaction going on. That'd be nice. But let's go over and look at this other list here. I've got to have a few other topics that we can go over. So one thing that I do want to talk about is the filibuster. No. Let's try an effort one. Let's close out of that too. So that's not it. That's also not it. So we had some criticism about this migrant facility, being put in and supported or whatever. I just sent the link. That was the link there, Jesse. I sent you a link, and you just have to click it and join the server on your phone. But unaccompanied minors crossing the southern border are on the rise. And this is where these migrant, this migrant facility, this is where this comes into play here. Because a lot of people had given some, criticism to the Biden administration for essentially having this other migrant facility open to house these unaccompanied minors while they're being transferred to a liaison, or not a liaison, but kind of like a caretaker, and once again, I'm a little bit disappointed in people getting freaked out about this and, just using dishonest arguments for this situation, because you can't really adequately or accurately compare this situation to, whenever the Trump administration essentially separated out families and this and that. These are unaccompanied minors, and they're being held in a facility to protect them from COVID and all this other stuff. Let me see. Hey, what's up?
Are we there?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, it was just initially sending the text. It wasn't actually sending the initial link. So
okay.
It took a minute.
That's all right. So I was just talking about these situation here. You're watching the stream, right? So you can see my screen.
Actually, I had to back out of the stream.
Oh.
But it's okay.
Well,
it's all right.
I was just talking about how the Biden administration was, quote unquote, put under fire in, I want to say January, late January, early February or whatever.
Yeah, the last I heard was something about the migrant facilities.
Right. So what I was trying to mention is I'm getting a little burnt out on this, because somebody heard something that is related to the same subject as what Trump, and it goes back to even, when it was like Bush and Obama, like something that was criticized with Bush and then Obama does it, then we just have to, if it's loosely related, we have to say, ho ho ho, it's like that meme with Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen or whatever. It's like, you bitched about that, so we just have to arbitrarily, bitch about it.
You don't have feedback in my mic, do you?
No.
Okay. Yeah. See, that's another thing where people don't understand the simple concept of reality, Jason. I mean, you had Trump's border policies of, hey, we're accepting no one. So how many migrants do you believe they had? People were deterred from trying to come into the country illegally. And then you have a change in the Biden policy. So now it's, hey, yes, we will accept migrants. So why would you not expect the migrants to increase 100-fold without us, having the time to improve the facilities? So that's not
Right.
a Biden problem. That's a change in policy.
That's an American
And all they're
problem. I mean, our immigration policy in general is just not great.
Yeah. So all they're doing now is, okay, what you may have had 100 people per day that were trying to cross the border illegally, and Trump wasn't, allowing them in. Now you have Biden's policy changing, saying, hey, we're going to take these migrants. They need assistance. But yet, what do you expect in the first, what's it been, 70 days?
Yeah, it
Do
hasn't
you
even
expect
been
them to
90
be able
days.
to, exactly, do you expect them to be able to improve the facilities to adequately, facilitate those people? No.
Well, playing
And they're
devil's
getting
advocate.
so much of a surge, you can't blame Biden.
Well, being devil's advocate, though, and I'm not saying that I don't think he should be accepting, these kids or whatever. That's not the case.
Well, I don't either, but that's the change in the policy, and you just have to accept that.
Well,
There's nothing we can do about it.
I was just going to mention that before you open up the borders, maybe it should be prioritized to fix the facilities before you allow a big surge of people to come through. That would be the responsible thing to do.
Exactly, but instead, we reverse the policies, and then at the snap of a finger, we now have the migrant issue. So,
right. Well, and of course,
as I say, that is a Biden policy issue. There, they should have made sure the facilities were adequate before they decided to open the border.
Right. But
is it wrong? No. I mean, we should take those that we can, but you have to have the facilities before you can just open things up.
My big question, and it's too bad that this, maybe it's not too bad because we can actually have a conversation about it instead of me just talking to a mic. But so why is it that the U.S., in your opinion, do you think that we have this policy? It's a little perplexing, like on Trump's side. We aren't going to accept anybody. I'm just kind of confused about that because we're the reason that they're seeking asylum in the first place. I mean, we're the reason that there's a drug war. So why would we not accept, these people? And if we don't want to accept them, right? If we don't want these people coming in our country, then we should fix the drug war, and then we don't have to have them in our country. Just seems like the solution here is, hey, we're super focused on this piece of dirt that is the Mexico-U.S. border, and not worrying about the 1,000 miles south in El Salvador or wherever, where the real problem is and should be taken care of.
But instead of fixing it, what does a Republican, what does a Democrat do? They try to argue border policy left and right. They're not trying to improve living conditions. And that's where you're right. We should try to improve their conditions before we go out and we just say, hey, we got to close the border. Hey, we got to open the border. Let's try to improve what they have there instead of just telling everyone, hey, come here or stay away.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that.
And there's different ways to go about things, and it seems like we always go about it the wrong way.
Well, we're always reactive instead of proactive.
Exactly.
The 2008, even before that, actually. So there was 2008 that was the problem. What was the crisis prior to that? Like a financial crisis.
I don't recall.
I know that there was.
Then there was.
Then
there were the 10,000 Guatemalans moving north. I mean, it's a never-ending issue.
I'm saying,
but yet we never find a solution.
Well, economically, if you think about it, we had the 2008 crisis, which was brought on by trying to fix a crisis in the 80s, right? There was this big housing crisis in the 80s, and then there was also, I'm trying to remember what exactly that It was even maybe a little bit before that with, Nixon. I mean, there was all of these different problems, and then a long time ago, like 40 years ago or something like that, in the 70s and 80s, these politicians put in measures to try to fix these issues, and they were just catastrophically wrong, dude. Like they really just, wow, dude, you fell right on your face. And then we have this problem of tribalism between these parties. We've turned our political system into a football game instead of turning it into, hey, we all got to live on this piece of land together.
Instead of meeting the problem head on, what we do is we try to funnel it. Well, that funnel goes the opposite direction. So you help people on one side, and then you end up hurting those on the other side, and then you end up with the same exact issue later on down the road, which makes things worse.
Right.
It's nothing is ever solved.
I mean, one other thing that I wanted to talk about today. Let's move to this one because it's a hot one. The gun issue, right? And I'm just only labeling it that because everybody knows it as that. I don't think that it's a gun issue. I think it's a white supremacy issue. I think that it's a toxic masculinity issue. I think it's a culture issue where people think that it's okay to just, I mean, it's not even that they think it's okay. They know it's wrong in many cases, actually. But
true. But
it's
you have. Go ahead.
I was just going to finish up and say, and I'll let you speak then. But I was just going to finish up by saying that it seems to me that we have something core within the households, and no, for all of our viewers that want to be the Leonardo DiCaprio and point at the screen and say, haha, it's because God's not in schools.
Because this guy or that guy.
It's
not.
Correct. It's not because of religiosity. It's just strictly because of people not being given the knowledge that they need to be able to raise successful people in society. I just don't feel like the proper skills are being taught to the parents, and then the parents don't have the knowledge to even pass on the skills. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you if you take, for instance, this idea of what they call cancel culture, okay?
Yeah, which I don't think is really that big of a deal, but
well, I mean, it only is because it's really not that big of a deal, but people have made it a big deal.
Sure.
All right, you have an issue of, okay, we have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of literally pretty much everything you can think of in this country, other than trying to force your views on others, correct?
Yeah.
And now we have this cancel culture where if someone publicly states their views and 2 million people on social media start a trend of, this guy is terrible, or this actor or this actress, they're terrible, we don't like them anymore.
Yeah.
Well, then they're out of a job because they're not agreed with. Well, don't support them financially by their movies or this and that. There's no reason that we should cancel someone because of a different view. Like, we don't always agree on views. I mean, we argue regularly, but it's a legitimate debate.
Yeah.
Hell, sometimes you come out seeing things my way. More often, I come out seeing things yours. That's how things work.
Yeah,
but
at least we're able to have the discussion.
Exactly, but you can't just say because you disagree with someone, we need to cancel them. They're actors, they're actresses, they're not politicians. They don't hold public office. They're not making decisions for you. If you disagree with them, disagree with them.
Right.
But don't, but now this cancel culture thing, you're ruining people's lives because you don't agree with what they say. Okay, if you don't agree with what they say, did you buy their last 15 movies? Probably.
So,
did you enjoy those movies? Probably. But now because you disagree with them, and they're just an actor, they're not affecting your life in any way, but yet you're canceling them because of their opinions. We all have our opinions, right?
Yeah.
And, just like right now, we're on your podcast. We're stating our opinions publicly.
Right, and that's what I want the podcast to be. I don't want to stifle anybody for certain. And
exactly. Just because someone comes in and they differ opinions with us, Jason, Like right now, I'm on your Discord.
Yeah.
If we get into an issue where we disagree, are you going to be like, oh,
No.
nope, that guy never comes back again?
Well,
No, we debate. No,
it depends, I suppose. Like
well,
the severe
if
cases of like you just to start, reading from Mein Kampf and start spouting out Nazi rhetoric,
exactly.
I'd probably say
that's different. Yes.
Jesse, it's been good talking to you, but
I mean, there's a difference between being, openly belligerent and unaccepting of different ideologies.
Sure.
And, understanding the different ways of thinking. And that's what I think that cancel culture, brings into play. It's like, they say, oh, this person sees differently than I do, so let's ruin their existence.
Well, I mean, a perfect example.
Where does
I was going to say a perfect example of this is Gina Carano, right?
Exactly.
I understand exactly what she was trying to get at there, and I think it was an idiotic tweet, personally. But I get her point. I get her point, and
that was her voicing her opinion.
I don't think that they should have kicked her off of Disney for it. Now, I mean, if she was like a part of the Mickey Mouse Club, maybe, but she's not. She's an adult fucking show, dude.
Even the Mickey Mouse Club. I mean, that was 30 years ago. So.
Yeah. Well, you see what I'm saying? Like, if she was in some children's thing where you're trying to like actually be some role model or something, but in this case, it's kind of like Charles Barkley. Hey, kid, I ain't your freaking role model, dude. Like, what are they getting at?
Exactly. Let me have my opinions. I'll let you have yours.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with me, but let's, and that's the thing. Instead of someone saying, hey, Gina, let's have a debate about this and see where we differ.
Yeah.
No, it was nope, let's cancel you.
Well,
let's start a petition and let's just get you thrown completely out.
That's one of the reasons I'm not big on Disney anymore. I'm seriously just for other reasons too. I don't really like the content that they keep pushing. I don't like how they ruin franchises by just fucking milking it like a cash cow. But the point that I would make here specifically, that I think that Disney really screwed up on this case, is that they're just making this problem worse, because grifters like fucking Ben Shapiro, for example, are just going to latch onto this Gina Carano thing, just like he latched onto this Candace Owens thing. And he's just essentially grifting off of these two people who are victims, quote unquote, of cancel culture, when honestly, the one person, she's probably going to get jobs after this. But as far as Candace Owens,
you know damn well she is.
With Candace Owens, she's a fucking Nazi, dude. Like, I don't care what anybody says. That's somebody that literally goes against her own culture and then tries to, like that's a very touchy and weird thing there. Like, Candace Owens is a very not good person.
She does go to the extremes. She does go to the extremes on shit. But I will give her this. About 60% of the time, she is correct. But you're right. She does go to the extremes on certain things, trying to blame, this on this person, this on that person. No. When she's making the point that everyone can better themselves and, this and that, it's great. But when she tries to bring out this, look at me, for example, it's like, no, you don't use yourself for example. Yeah, exactly. If you can't relate to someone's circumstances, don't just look at them and say, "Oh, hey, you can do as good as I can."
That's kind of that's kind of like a number of issues where people just essentially come out and say, "Well," and she does it probably the most of a lot of people that I've seen, but essentially, hey, I'm black, so it doesn't count, dude. Like, what?
Exactly.
What?
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what.
She can come out when she can come out and she can say, "Hey, black people aren't suppressed because look at me, look what I've done." That's when you're like, you are a very small statistic.
Yeah.
In a larger picture, and then you're going to try to tell it the whole other side of the portfolio that, hey, do better. You have no option. It's like, yes, you have options. We can improve this.
Right. But I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of these bad actors out there, and I don't know that I'm necessarily that this guy's in the same exact boat as Ben Shapiro, which I pay pretty close attention to what Ben does, and also another person, Jordan Peterson.
I say Ben is another one that I'm 50-50 on the fence with. I agree with certain things that he says, but then again, he's so far out there. You're like, where is your mind at?
Yeah.
Okay, like think. If you want to, it just brings it back to, people's freedom of decisions, ideology. If you sit there and you look at that, and all he says is, "Oh, I'm just based off science." Okay, but based off science, if I want to believe what I want to believe and you want to believe what you believe, then why are we raising an issue of you telling me I can't think a certain way?
Yeah. I mean, he very
I
commonly
think
will push this
I,
very conservative religious view for like making policy, and I'm just not okay with that. I don't care what religious view it is. I would like to base policy on, just good policy,
moralism.
right. Nothing to do with ideology, and I'm not telling people they can't, practice their ideology. I have plenty of friends that are Christians and a few that are other denominations, but when you put it in the government, it's a problem.
Exactly. Once you place that in the government, that's where it oversteps the line. I mean, we look at gay marriage.
Yeah.
Okay. When did that come along? When it was actually completely legalized? What?
Not that long ago.
8-10 years ago. I said 8-10 years ago.
Yeah, not that long ago. I don't. Something like that.
And now we're in this debate of transgenderism.
Right, and I think that case is just, it's something, once again, with the I'm just calling it this because it's not an issue for me, so I don't want anybody to think that it's an issue for me or something, but the gay issue,
not an issue for me either.
Right, so the gay issue is, I'm just labeling it that. People were uncomfortable about it because it's against that, once again, the cultural norms. It's not, what traditionally people have done in a lot of the cultures in the United States openly. And then that became kind of normalized. And now we're in another weird situation where there's been, trans anything, transvestite, transsexual, whatever you want to, pronoun you want to use there. There's been, those people exist for long time. They just haven't been out in the open about it as much because of, once again,
they haven't been publicized. Yep, they have not been publicized, correct.
And I'm just saying that while some people, and once again, I'm not saying that I have a problem with any of this, but if some people feel uncomfortable by that, it's like, okay, well, I mean, I guess you could just not be around to those people, or you can just have the right to feel uncomfortable, but they presumably are people that also pay into the fucking tax system and also vote. So why are we even saying that, there's anything separate about them? They should get every single thing that any other citizen, straight, gay, black, white, Asian, Muslim, whatever. It doesn't matter that it weirds you out because from your perspective, once again, not my perspective or yours as in your perspective, but
from someone's perspective,
right,
it is not right to them. But that brings it back to the freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Everyone has the freedom to express themselves.
Right. Have you ever watched?
But then you have.
Have you ever watched Jubilee on YouTube? Where they do
I'm not sure if I ever have.
You should check.
I watched just out of curiosity. Like I said, I don't pay attention to much of it, but I did see one time that jazz story thing. I did watch quite a bit of that, and that's I mean, that is, it gives you a different perspective on certain things.
Yeah, what jazz story are you talking about?
The I Am Jazz documentary thing.
Huh, I haven't ever watched it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's a younger. It started out. She's like a Latino boy as a child, and
Oh, Did we just lose out? I think Discord just went down. Yeah.
Yeah, look it up. I believe it's called My Life is Jazz or something like that. Yeah, I mean that's the thing, you know. Mind your business. Let people live their own lives. And if people would watch more things like that, they'd understand, you know, when, like, people say pronouns, okay? If I go out into public and I bump into someone and they appear to be male, I'm going to say, "Oh, sorry, sir. Excuse me, sir."
Yeah. I agree with
Same
that.
as female, you know. I'm going to say, "Well, sorry, ma'am. Excuse me. I didn't mean to bump into you." Well, certain people think that no matter their appearance, what they identify is what they should be called. Well, if I don't know you personally, how am I going to know how?
Yeah.
And this is where I agree with Shapiro on this one. If I meet you in public, this is one of the few things I agree with him on. If I meet you in public and I bump into you, and you appear to be a male,
Yeah.
you can't put me on the damn fire because I didn't gender you properly, you know, gender you to what you feel. You can just simply say, okay, not a big deal. But no, there's people out there, if you bump into them and they say, you know, you're like, "Oh, sorry, sir," and they identify as female, they will flip on you, you know, because you didn't gender them properly.
So
that's where I have the issue with the gender thing.
So I have a lot of issue with this, and I'm sure there's a few people that probably are going to give me crap about this. They're going to give me crap about this, honestly. But
well, I might even give you crap about it. But guess what? That's the great thing about a debate. You know,
which this is a discussion.
Views.
Like I think of a debate as like a formal debate, like, you know, Bill Nye and Answers a Genesis guy or whatever the hell his name was, Ken Ham. Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah, I did see a little bit of that. Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's what I think of a debate is like. Okay, 20 or 5 minutes for opening statements and blah blah blah. This is just, in my opinion, kind of a long form discussion.
Exactly, just back and forth conversation.
Sure, but what I was going to say is to me, and I understand that things, no matter who you are, whether you're, you know, you're trans, you're, you know, straight, you're, you know, you're gay or whatever, the various different spectrum in between. It seems like there's just sexuality as a part of the human condition, like just whatever, anything regarding sex seems to be just a very, very major piece of everyone's lives, a lot of people's lives. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. You know, obviously, I don't have to deal with feeling like I'm, you know, some other gender or whatever from, you know, just cis or whatever, or cis male. So I obviously don't have to deal with this issue. But the thing that's confusing for me, and it would be this, it's the same confusion that I have of people that are just severe, diehard, if you talk crap about a certain team, they'll beat you up sports fan.
Exactly. They don't understand the difference of opinion.
It's not even that. It's just, how could you allow yourself to be so fixated on just your sexuality, for example?
Yeah.
Just,
so introverted on just your personal opinions in this.
Right.
Yeah.
So these people who would get that mad about, and I've had it not happen in an extreme case, but I've experienced this probably 2 or 3 times in the same situation that you've talked about. Not me personally. I mean, I have long hair, and it's getting longer. So I imagine at some point somebody's going to mistake me for a woman, and I could not even remotely imagine. It almost makes me laugh.
Around and being offended.
Like, I'm just saying, exactly. Like, it almost makes me laugh thinking about it. Being offended that somebody called me ma'am, and then, like, going on some tirade.
You turn around with your big old Jesus beard, you know.
Stick the hip out or whatever, and just be like, listen here, motherfucker. It's like, dude, I can't even empathize with that. Because I can't possibly even imagine. Even if somebody were to call me the worst name in the book, and it's a complete stranger. Once again, I criticize people that do this, that just get in a fight on the weirdest circumstances. Like somebody says the
Yeah,
weirdest thing or catches the wrong eye at their girlfriend or whatever. You have to
exactly.
then take a step in your
Exactly.
life and say, this is a
What the
problem
hell
I
am I
need to
doing?
fix. This is a
Yeah. I
problem.
mean, when I'm out, and it might be this not be the same with you in autumn, but when I'm out and I catch somebody staring at my wife, you know what I'm thinking? That's right, she's mine.
Yeah,
You stare all you
exactly.
want because that's all you're gonna get to do.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying, just for clarification, that like the trans thing is a problem or being gay or anything like that's a problem. But
Oh
the
no,
problem
it's not a problem.
specifically, the specific thing that I'm saying is a problem, since we're on this issue and people are touchy on it, because like I said, trans and gay and all this, and then I said problem. So they'll just put those pieces together like, haha, you're anti whatever. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that regardless of what you are, whether you're cis male, cis female, gay,
Yes,
trans, whatever. It doesn't
it's
matter
all
what
acceptable.
person you are. It's
It is all
unacceptable
acceptable.
to put these traps in your mind and then use them as excuses to say, well, I was justified in just going off on somebody because they misgendered somebody. Now, a caveat
Exactly.
on that, this quick caveat on that is, if somebody's just being a belligerent douchebag about it, like I refuse.
Well, that's entirely different.
If somebody
Then
just
they
refuses,
deserve to be called out. Yeah.
and then it's like, to me, I don't really. So Jordan Peterson this is where I have a problem with Jordan Peterson.
See, I'm not sure I know Jordan Peterson.
You'd know him if you've
I
seen
don't think
him.
I've seen that one.
He's used very commonly, so I don't think that he's like a
Is he
traditional American
is he the
conservative or anything, but he's a
is
Canadian.
he the prove me wrong? Is he the prove me wrong guy?
No, that's Crowder. That's Louder with Crowder.
Oh, okay,
I don't
okay,
remember
okay.
his
Yeah,
first
see,
name.
I don't pay a whole lot of attention to those people that just try to instigate certain things.
Yeah,
Those I
Crowder
avoid.
is definitely an instigator.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Put my booth up and hey, this is my view. Prove me wrong. I mean, that's just you're stirring the shit pot there.
I don't disagree with him doing that, I guess. I think that people should
Well,
have
well, no,
conversations, but I think that he just is very commonly
he,
bulldozes the conversation.
yes, he goes about it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah, he goes about it completely the wrong way.
But just get back with my thought on Jordan Peterson specifically. And I'd invite you
I'll
to
have to look that up.
look him up.
Yeah, I
He's
have to look that one
very
up.
much on this. So he's a Canadian, he's a professor, and he teaches psychology, I think. Don't quote me on that, but he's either a psychologist or psychiatrist. I can't remember. I think it's psychologist. And he's written all these number of books, and he talks pretty commonly about child rearing and different roles in like a traditional household and this and that, etc. So the thing that I disagree with him on is he very commonly.
I would like to.
What?
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say I would like him to define traditional household. I would like to hear his definition on that.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about it
I'll,
mainly from a like a. He's pretty good
a
at what he does.
1940s, yeah, 1940s. This is what's right. This is what wrong kind of thing.
No, and I think that people very commonly misconstrue him on this, and I'm not saying that I am like I am not a Jordan Peterson apologist, but I always like to, if I know what people's stance is, I like to be honest on what their stance is. But so like,
Does he have things like Shapiro? I can go and watch the different things.
he has a lot of lectures that he's given, and he has
Okay.
debates
Yeah.
that he's done. So yeah, there's a number of things. He's done a debate with Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris, which I like Sam Harris quite a bit.
Yes, I agree on that. I do. I mean, Sam Harris, I mean, he's one of the closest ones. Like I said, yeah, about 85-90% of it I will agree with. But
Yeah,
he still has his out there kind of views that
like psychedelics.
make you, yeah, like make you step back and think a little.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll have to look him up when we're done here.
But so Jordan Peterson,
I want to see those.
he's a Canadian through and through, and he went to the Canadian Parliament in regards to these laws that they passed regarding hate speech and misgendering people in this. and talking about the same exact issue. And I'm dead serious. There's the whole entire like hour-long situation here. Let me try to find it.
Well, what I need to look up is, I'll go back and watch this after we're done. But go ahead and pull it up if you can.
Peterson, Jordan. Oh, I'm not going to watch the whole thing. It's like an hour long or more. I mean, he sits in front of British Parliament, and the thing that he's trying to, or not British Parliament, Canadian
Parliament.
That's
my thing, though. I mean, that's the biggest thing that irritates the shit out of me. Is that people think that if you gender them by appearance, and that's what I agree with Shapiro on. You can't hold me accountable if you are a female that is dressed like a male and have male appearances, or vice versa, and I bump into you and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry, sir. Whatever." When I bump into you, you can't just call me out in public because I misgendered you in your opinion.
That's completely ridiculous.
Exactly. But I mean, there are certain instances where I do agree with the concept that there are people, that dress a certain way. Say you have a male that identifies female, and they're going through hormone therapy or this and that.
Yeah.
And they're wearing their sandals, their skirt, but their beard hasn't quite gone away yet. You got a 5 o'clock shadow out there, but you identify as female, and some asshole decides to go, "Oh, sorry, sir."
Yeah.
That is where it becomes unacceptable.
Right.
You just can't hold everyone accountable, for gendering someone in a certain way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think that, though, and what Jordan Peterson's talking about, I guess, in his conversation, which I put that in chat, is that essentially he's trying to say that if we change the meanings of words and then put a mandate on it, like this hate speech mandate, that we're essentially kind of kicking the hornet's nest. We're going to be causing a problem in the future because it'll be some dystopian hellscape where you can have cancel culture when somebody just essentially doesn't like you, and it's a mob rule. And I think that he's not really seeing the whole deal here. He's just
I'll have to watch it.
He's arguing something because he has personally been put on to fire of this, and there's even another interview on this Scavlan, which I just pulled up. I'll put that in the link. I've watched a ton of his stuff, and there's a really great interview with him on British GQ, and I think that female interviewer was one of the better interviewers I've seen on any interview. I think she did a dang good job, especially with this guy. But the thing that I don't think that he's quite understanding here is, why do you care about what the traditional definition is of something if we're already admitting that in the whole entire trans movement, the whole point that is even trying to be made is that we're realizing, and the science is coming out, that the human condition is a wide spectrum on many different areas, including sexuality. And
exactly.
And for him to just go over and say, "Well, I refuse to call you ma'am or sir," or whatever the case may be, because it's not the traditional use of the word. It's like, dude, you're supposed to be an educator, and I'm trying to promote, first of all, a decent friggin' world where people don't have to worry about, keeping to somebody's specific definition for their own identity. But it's just, you're on the wrong side of things here. You might have a point, but it's just a douchey point, and it doesn't really get us anywhere.
Exactly. And that brings me to my next point, which we haven't touched on yet. Like, I don't care if you're male or female. I don't give a shit how you identify. I'm sorry if I said shit, which is
no, I don't care.
But,
I don't care.
Okay. But I don't care how you identify. You can identify however you would like. Once you let me know how you would like to be identified, that's great.
Yeah.
Now, this might stir the pot here, which I'm all for stirring the pot. What I have an issue with, Jason,
Yeah.
is there are certain people that try to identify as non-binary. So, and that's not because I have an issue with what their belief is, but when someone says they do not identify as male or female, if I'm in a public setting, how do I properly approach them without being in the wrong? If you could give me, if you come up with a solution to that, but I have not found one yet.
Oh, well, I think that once again, this just goes back to just this, in my mind, and I'm just serious here. If somebody has, once again, traps in their mind to where if they're identifying as non-binary, I have no knowledge of this, right? And I'm just walking
that's
around.
What I'm saying.
And I say, hey, sir, ma'am, and I get it wrong. At that point, it should be up to them to say, oh, excuse me, I'm actually, Miss or Mrs. or, which I don't even think Miss and Mrs. should be a thing, but.
Exactly. If they're non-binary, then what do we have a pronoun?
Yep, they call them they.
I'm aware of that, them, they, but
right.
When you meet someone out in a public setting, where is your 30 seconds you get to say, oh, I'm wrong, before you've already offended them, and that's the problem with society. It's as soon as you say that,
yeah,
you're already wrong, you've already offended them, so you're on the back side of the burner, and they're going to just try to grill you to, oh, you did this to me, you offended me. It's like, how many times can I apologize before you understand I was just, greeting you or, apologizing to you?
I would just have to ask.
Does that come into play?
I would just have to ask in that scenario, have you ever had that scenario happen?
Yes, I have.
And what happened in the scenario?
Exactly what I explained. I bumped into someone at the mall in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And, me and my daughter were playing. And oh, sorry, ma'am. And boom. Right away, here with my child at the little play place in the middle of the mall, I was grilled to the 5th degree on, I am not a ma'am, I am not a sir, I am non-binary. Yeah. And this individual, that's what I'm going to say, this individual, because they're not identifying as either, was wearing a skirt, a jacket, had longer hair that was down.
I know, but what was the situation that you even addressed this person in the first place is my question.
Well, I had bumped into them.
Oh, and you said, excuse me, sir, ma'am, or something?
I said, sorry, ma'am, I didn't mean to bump you. And I said, they had turned around and said, well, this isn't how I identify. And I'm like, how do I know when you're wearing it wasn't a short skirt. It was.
I would just say, I'm going to cut you off at the pass. Jesse, that's a toxic person and shouldn't be used as an example for this, honestly.
Exactly, but they have to be used as an example because those people are the ones that bring this whole thing into light. Because the ones that actually identify one way or another, or don't have an issue saying, hey, excuse me.
I just thought of something. Hey, not only can Karens be female and male, but they can also be non-binary.
And I almost brought up the Karen thing earlier. I almost brought that up myself. I'm glad you did, because I almost did earlier. But that's my thing, though. When there is a female, and it was actually a female. I said, they're not going to see this podcast. I don't care. But it was actually a female wearing a skirt. And it wasn't a short skirt. It was like, a knee skirt.
Yeah.
With a child and had a jacket on. I said, we were both playing with our children. And I happened to bump into them. And I said, sorry, ma'am. And boom. I was straight out grilled on, I am not this, I am not that, don't try to do this or gender me or this and that. And I'm like,
At that point, I would have
And
just told her I don't give a shit, or him or her or they, and just told them, hey, you don't talk to me like that. I don't give a shit what the fuck you are.
Well, my wife doesn't like to cause a scene, so I wasn't going to cause a scene.
Well, they caused a scene already, so that's not on you.
No, it was a quiet conversation.
Oh, okay.
If it would have been, jumping back and screaming at me loudly, then I may have reacted differently.
Well, that's even better than just be like, oh, okay, well, I don't think that you should, you have to. So, like, for example, I've many times on my travels going overseas and going into airports and that for jobs, just because I like the conversation personally, I get that it could, put me into a bad, uncomfortable situation in some cases. But I like to talk to people about how I'm an atheist. And when when people go over and have a negative reaction to that, like, oh, and like there's this one lady that literally shuddered, like as though I literally just did crack in the freaking bathroom or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And then I asked him, I was like, wait a minute, why did you just have that reaction to that? I think that's a little strange. I was like, what do you think is going to happen here? And that's where you just got to tell people how it is. Like, hey, dude, person, whatever. You can't go over and do this to other people and then try to even help their cause, right? Like that's detrimental to the cause they are even talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jason, I mean, I make it no. I'm not shy about, the times I've fucked up and out of my luck, right? That.
Yeah, that's fine.
I've had 2 DUIs, all right?
Yeah.
On my second one, I had to attend a group class for 6 months.
Yeah.
And did I need it? I'm not gonna say I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I me, I drink beer. Shit, everybody drinks beer. I just happen to drink beer at the wrong times and fuck shit up.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I went to an addiction class, which was court mandated.
Yeah.
When I was in Kansas, and just listening to these people, I'm not gonna give you specifics, this and that. I mean, that was the whole point of the group. We all confided in each other. I graduated my class, everything was great, but there's people that think a certain way, and this addiction class kind of changed my perspective on the way a lot of people think about certain shit.
Yeah.
Because they're set in their mind, and they don't have any other way of protruding what they think. And if someone outside says, oh, well, can you do this? They're like, oh no, hell no.
Yeah.
My class was not just, people that drank beer, people that had DUIs. I mean, there were meth addicts, we had all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
And I sat there, and this is actually the middle of the pandemic, so I didn't even sit there for 6 months. I think it was like 10 months. And they just shortened the classes up and spread everybody out. But, they all just... There were some that come in the same time I did, where they had their thoughts and their views. And they left before I did. They were signed off on and said, hey, they're good. But, they were the court-ordered, addicts or this and that. Yeah. And with me, Shauna even said something to me one time. She goes, you should be done by now. I'm like, yeah, I should be. But I still got a little bit, because, they give you homework. They give you workbooks.
Yeah.
And, this pertains back to something that you said about the Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12-step thing.
Yeah.
A while back. That, I understand what you're saying, but when I went in there, that's what it was. They worked off the 12-step book.
Well, how can that be court mandated then?
Well, because what the 12 steps supposedly tells you is a higher power, right?
Yeah.
In the group sessions and all this, it doesn't matter. You don't have to say Jesus or religion is my higher power. You know what my higher power was when I went in?
What?
It was the group.
Yeah. But I
They
mean,
are what kept
ultimately, the thing that I disagree about that on isn't just that, you know, what people are choosing as the higher power. It's the same thing that religions do in saying that you're
exactly
essentially a
the
piece of
fact that you
crap,
have to
and that
you have to submit to something else.
you aren't
You have to submit to something else.
worthy of redemption unless you submit yourself. Yeah, like what you're saying.
Exactly, and that's why, you know, I got thinking long and hard after my third week in that class. And when they said, "What's your higher power?" to this and that, I'm doing the workbook.
Yeah.
And you know, I couldn't come up with a goddamn thing.
Yeah.
All I could think of, all I could do is sit there, and you know, they say, "What's your higher power? What is your reason for, you know, sobering up?" You know, my reason was my daughter.
Yeah. That's a good reason.
Well, my daughter's my reason, but when they say, "What is your higher power?" What makes you want to? What makes you want to? You know.
Yeah. What's your purpose?
Slow down your drinking, give up your drinking. Yeah, that's my daughter. You know.
Right. All right. I've got to change a battery here real quick. Just a second.
All right, go ahead and change. There, you're back.
Yeah, I need to get a mirrorless camera sometime because a lot of those will stay on.
Oh, yeah.
And right now I'm using a DSLR, which it's just so weird that I have a USB cable plugged into it, but apparently that doesn't charge the battery at all.
That doesn't
just
actually charge it.
data.
Yeah, it just keeps it going.
And there's not a plug-in on the outside of the camera either for just plugging it in and, you know, being on, you know, wall power or whatever.
Yeah. But back to our discussion though.
Yeah.
Like I said, I went to that DUI class, and they literally did it. You know, they're saying, hey, which I applaud them for this. It wasn't a DUI class. It wasn't, you know, drunk driving. It wasn't this. It was go into a substance abuse class for 6 months and understand how people with, you know, real addictions deal with their things.
Sure.
And I'll tell you what, that, you know, like I said, me not, and I still drink beer, but do I go out 5 nights a week to the bar? Do I drive home drunk? No. But that kind of put me in the perspective of this is what people with, you know, true addictions really deal with.
Right.
And, you know, I never had an idea.
So, I mean, I'm glad we're on this subject. I talked with Brandon Motley. I don't know if you've watched some of my podcasts. I'm not offended if you haven't. But
no, I've watched a few of them, but I haven't. I didn't see that one.
They're long, they're long form conversations.
I know. God damn it! I love the long podcast. If I can learn something.
Well, I talked with Brandon. It's up on my page on Facebook. It's also on YouTube. But
I have to watch that one later on.
Yeah, that was almost 2 hours. This one's going. We're just now hitting about the same time, or this podcast is hitting about the same time as Brandon's. But anyhow, what I was going to say is we talked pretty extensively about the drug war, you know, and not just he was talking more specifically on, you know, cannabis, but I even broaden it beyond that and saying that, you know,
I mean,
having
you've got to bring it beyond that because now cannabis is coming legal. I mean, if you're going to talk about a drug war, you have to. I mean, look at every different nation we have. I mean, drugs are drugs regardless. Hell, the cigarette I'm smoking right now is a drug.
Yeah.
The beer I drank an hour ago, it's technically a drug. You know, You have to widen your horizons on that shit.
Well, I was just going to say that decriminalizing all drugs really kind of breaks the cycle on this. And it seems counterintuitive at the start, but it really does work.
And you're right. What are you looking at with cannabis right now? I mean, I know you don't have statistics, but I'm just saying, bring them up for the next time that we talk about this thing.
What about it?
When cannabis is legalized, which it's what, 12 to 15 states now?
I'm not sure, but I would believe it's maybe even more than that. But
it may even be more. But that's the thing. It no longer becomes a drug issue. It's not a political issue. Just like alcohol. I mean, cannabis has become just like somebody going and buying a 12-pack of beer. You know.
Right. Biden's still firing people for popping on piss tests, though.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know.
It's like,
I know,
what the F, man?
Oh yeah, no, and what did you see? I can't remember what department it was, but the one guy, when he got confirmed, he fired every goddamn person at the department.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell? And then he fired like 3/4 of them, and they brought up the whole thing of, well, didn't Kamala Harris admit to smoking weed, even 15 years ago?
Yeah.
It's
man. Like, she smoked a blunt 15 years ago. Let's fucking let's shut the country down.
Yeah, let's shut it all down because she did this 15 years ago.
Oh my gosh. She's still high. I mean, it was that good a weed.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, people just go off on this random bullshit. But that was the thing, though. He fired most of them on marijuana.
Jeez.
And it's like, okay, can't you fire your vice president then?
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell are you thinking?
Well, he was just saying that they currently popped on the piss test, which I don't think piss tests should be allowed. That's another thing I talked about. Like, if your boss walked up to your house and knocked on the door in the 9 o'clock at night, and was all like, "Hey, Jesse,
exactly.
I'd like to look at your house and make sure it's all tidy in here. You don't have any illicit drugs."
Well, my house would be tidy, but I'll tell you what. If he knocked on my house at 10 o'clock, he said, "Hey, Jesse, I gotta have to take an alcohol test." Well, guess what? 4 out of 5 nights a week, he'd be good.
Yeah.
But there's another 3 nights that I drink beer when I get off work. So you're going to tell me I got to take an alcohol test right now for no reason?
Well, the point I'm trying to make is they don't have a right to look at your property, and they don't have a right to your body.
Exactly. They don't have the right to do that shit.
I would say even in the case, which technically I don't think they have like a right. Like they're not saying that you can't possibly get any job without, doing a piss test or whatever, but all of the major companies, they make it so that you either have to give blood or give urine. And I'm just saying, dude, it's none of your business. If I can go do my job and I can be qualified for the job, what's in my bloodstream makes absolutely no difference. I mean, are you going to fire me from a job because I have blood pressure medication and might fall asleep or something like that? I mean, where do we...
30 days is what they claim marijuana, which, depending on the potency, yes, I agree with that. But the thing is, if I work my job flawlessly for 9 years... And shit, I haven't even been at my job for 9 years. I've been there at 5. But if I work my job flawlessly for 9 years, and I smoked weed a week before I wrecked my forklift because somebody pulled out in front of me and I smacked a thing of racking. I'm not speaking from experience, but I'm seeing things what I've witnessed. And they take me down for a piss test. And I test positive for marijuana, THC. Oh, they can fire me, even though
levels. See, I think it should make sense on the levels.
I wasn't under the influence of it, but yet I went and took a piss test for my job because I wrecked into something.
Oh, yeah.
And boom, and I got fired. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with the world?
It's just another way that they can, have control of the populace, and they try to frame it as kind of like a safety issue or whatever. And I can say confidently that I know so many people, a number of people, so many people.
Oh, so do I.
That we're talking these guys, these people, they smoke on a daily basis. They're regularly, quote unquote, high, and they're able to do literally anything that anybody else can do when they're not high. Yep. Like, there's no risk. But I mean, if somebody's flying an airplane, do I want them taking a big old bong rip? Certainly not.
Exactly, but that's
let's use some fucking common
with the forklift,
sense.
Though. Exactly, but that's the thing with a drug test like that. Okay, whether you're flying a plane or driving a forklift, how long do you test positive for THC? Up to 30 days, right?
Something like that. I don't know. Something like that.
Exactly. So, if a guy bumps a pole on a forklift, I say this is what I deal with constantly. He bumps a pole on a forklift. Guess what? He's going downtown for a drug test.
Yeah.
He might have smoked weed 2 weeks ago, but guess what? If it comes back positive, he's getting fired for a failed drug test. Right. There has to be something more efficient. Like,
well, right now these guys. Right now, they haven't had any need to do that because it's already like illegal. So they can just say, "Well, zero tolerance, illicit substance, you're done." But from here on out,
no.
And currently, is what I'm saying.
No, our plant in Colorado, even though pot is legal.
Really?
Our plant in Colorado, if you get in a wreck on a forklift, you bump a pole or whatever, or even if somebody else runs into you, you go for a drug test because your forklift was involved in the accident.
Yeah. I remember
you go down for a drug test. Mm-hmm. You go down for that drug test, and you fail it, you're fired.
I remember working for the oil field, and I had to go out in the field all the time, driving this big Ford F-250 extended cab, extended bed. I mean, it's a huge truck. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, I was working at a team of two, mechanic and,
mechanic and driver.
Electrician.
And support electrician driver, yeah.
So anyhow, we would go out to these well sites or, the fracking sites or whatnot, and we would just be the mechanic or the maintenance support, like the on-site field support. We one time were stopped. It was in West Virginia. We were stopped coming down the mountain when she comes. Now we were stopped we were stopped at a stoplight coming down the mountain. Mm-hmm. We had been sitting there for like 15 or 20 seconds, and then whack! We look off to the right, and a deer ran into us while we were dead stopped. And it went over and stumbled a while. Yeah, we got drug tested and taken out of the field for 4 days until the drug test came back. Yep. Where we couldn't even work. And we're hourly.
That's asinine. Yeah, that's asinine.
That's absurd, dude.
Well, and see, that brings back to our union discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. My union, if they say if I was in an accident, somebody else hit me, and boom, got a drug test. That's one good thing about my union, which I don't drive a forklift anymore. I haven't driven one in 3 years.
Yeah.
But if someone hits me on a forklift, my test comes back negative, they're gonna make me do another person's job if I'm qualified. But if I'm a forklift driver that's not qualified anywhere else in the plant, guess what? I sit at home.
Jeez.
Well, that's the thing though. If my tests come back clean and I sit at home for 4 days, I get paid for those days. I mean, we have a pretty good union. It's just they fight for all the fucking wrong things.
Yeah.
I mean, they want this or they want that or, And I'll tell you what. They say, oh, we ain't had a good raise in 15 years. All right, it's Topeka, Kansas. I make $24.35 an hour. Is it what I like a raise? Yes. But they're all fighting. They're all fighting for raises and this and that. And I understand. I mean, when I started 5 years ago, guess what the biggest bag of Funyuns was that we made?
What? Like a 12-ounce bag or what?
Well, it was a 16-ounce bag.
Okay.
But guess what that bag cost?
$3.69.
I think it was $3.99.
Okay.
You know what we make now?
What?
We make a bag of Funyuns that weighs almost 1.5 pounds, and they charge $7.99 for it. $7.99 for a bag of Funyuns.
Wow.
The 99-cent, you know, the ones you get at the grocery store or the gas station.
Yeah.
Funyuns, Doritos, all that. What are they? $1.59, $1.69 now?
Yeah.
So you've upped that, you know, roughly 70%. Yet you tell your employees that make, you know, the ones that package them, the ones put them in the bags and, well, not the bags, or the boxes and ship the boxes out. Oh. We're going to pay you another 10 cents an hour.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. That union, they're actually trying to fucking fight for people now. But like I said, they've raised all that shit. They think, oh, lump sum. And people have been, oh, lump sum, that's great. So what the average guy in my plant makes $40,000 to $45,000.
Yeah.
They give them a lump sum of 1%. Plus like a 1% raise over the next 3 years. That doesn't adjust to your cost of living.
No. But neither is the minimum wage, so.
Exactly. And I'm saying, and that's where we differ on minimum wage, but we also agree. You know, you gotta have a certain understanding.
Well, I mean, so the thing that is kind of difficult from certain positions on the minimum wage issue is that you can't just say, let's continue doing nothing, because that would be a moral failure, in my opinion. I mean, we have to allow in our society to provide people with the opportunity for prosperity. And right now we're not.
But Jason, here's where we differ. What's a minimum wage and what's a living wage?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm wanting a living wage ultimately, but we have to fight for this minimum wage because that's all we can ever get accomplished. You know, it's been how many years since Bernie Sanders has been trying to fight for the minimum wage and nothing happens.
I'm aware of that, but I still raise my argument. What's a living wage and what's a minimum wage?
Well, I mean, the living wage right now is about probably what you make, depending on the area you live in. But I'm saying, like, across the board, somewhere around $22 an hour, $21 an hour is a living wage across the board. But I think it once again, that's kind of doing a blanket statement that doesn't work in certain areas. So once again, this policy would have to be very specific.
I'm not arguing area. I'm not arguing, you know, certain areas. It's not. I'm just arguing what is a living wage? What is a basic wage for? That's what brings back to my statement when I put it in, you know, the text chat. You have jobs that college kids do for extra income. You have jobs that high school kids do when they reach 16 for extra income.
Yeah.
I have no issue, you know, that $8, $9, $10 an hour for them is not an issue.
So then the main thing we're talking about is the housing issue then, and not minimum wage.
Exactly. See, this is where we agree, but we disagree, then we agree again.
So I'm just saying that if we made it to where the wage stayed about where it was, but everybody's provided a house, then I am fine with that. But that's not the case. People have to pay for an unbelievable inflated housing market.
Exactly. So if the minimum wage was based on high school kids, college kids just making money on the side while they go to school,
and that's not what it should be
great.
Based on, though. That's
no. Well, no.
I disagree with that.
See,
I mean, I strongly disagree.
And I disagree with you. That's what I'm saying. That's where we have a general debate. So if they pay them $10 an hour, it's a high school kid, college kid going through school.
Okay.
Living at home, it's a decent wage. Where we agree is if you have a kid that is 18, 19, 20 going through college, still trying to live and pay their college tuition because their parents ain't paying it,
right?
Then you're right. That's where we agree. You have to pay them a livable wage because they still have housing. They have, everything else to pay. It depends on the circumstances. And that's the thing. They're living off the circumstances of the last 30 fucking years.
But ultimately, your whole thing kind of fails here because we know for a fact. Hold on a second. We know for a fact that it's not just 16 to 24-year-olds that are working minimum wage jobs. So if you want to say that, well, we're just kind of base the minimum wage upon this demographic, then we must then put a rule in saying that you must not pay somebody minimum wage. You should pay them this other wage if they have to pay for, a place to live. Once again, goes back to this living wage. And I'm cool with skinning this cat any other way. I'm just saying, ultimately, we're talking about one of the main issues.
You just heard what I said, right?
Some of it. I was looking up this number of workers. Here, I'll show you it on the live scene.
Oh, well, no, I only said it because I know you listen, but
no, go ahead.
Now we have a general. Now we have a general understanding of the normal view of, this guy doesn't deserve this guy doesn't deserve that.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that
exactly.
We need to then change the definition of what the minimum wage is based upon.
Exactly. If we could change the definition of the minimum wage, we'd make progress. But what I was doing was proving a point and arguing that, this guy does less work. Oh, this guy does that. That guy does less work. And that's the normal understanding of that's what minimum wage is. I don't take that perspective. I was just
right, but I guess if you're playing devil's advocate, the thing that I would say to that is that we know that there's quite a few people. There's a lot of wind blowing in your mic right now.
Oh, hold on, let me turn around. Yeah, no, I was just being the smart ass because that's what most people will say is, minimum wage is based on skill. It's based on this, it's based on that. No.
But a job isn't going to manage that skill increase either.
Exactly.
So that's why I was saying is that of course this isn't fully fleshed out, but I do plan on finishing this. I have a Google Doc started where I kind of made some bullets and I want to extrapolate upon them, but to kind of as a basic thing, in my mind, a system that it's not maybe the be all system, but just going off the top of my head, trying to think of different ways that we could not really have to change the system much, but just make modifications to the already existing system to make this work.
Exactly, but just like you've always said, and I have never heard against you, everyone deserves a living wage.
Right, and I'm saying that if we have unions, but not private unions, if we not like the European Union, they took it the wrong way, where they force people to have specific brands, and it's just they went way too far on that. But what I'm talking about is essentially a government formed organization or union that protects American citizens in the work industry, where essentially
Yep.
it does the same thing that a union steward or your union representative would do. There would be a government person that you would go to. You'd say, you know what, I'm getting tired of working at this other place. I want to go to my
Yep.
government official, and I'm just using terms that are commonly used so people don't get confused. But like your union steward, you go to your union steward and say, hey, I don't want to work at this place anymore. And plus, I also want to go to somewhere else because I have these other skills. And this also the thing that I'm thinking about could even encapsulate the education problem too, because I think that should be in the public sector and should not be in the private sector. I think that you should just go to some place and say, hey, I want to be a fucking electrical engineer. And they're like, okay, well, this is what it takes to be an electrical engineer. We're going to give you these classes. If you mess up on the class, you're going to pay for it. But as long as you pass the class, we'll support you in moving forward. And the reason that pays back is like a lot of people say, oh, well, that's going to screw up my taxes or whatever because I'm paying for this Joe Schmo to go through and become an electrical engineer as the low-hanging fruit. But it's like, dude, you're gaining out of that, though.
What's that? But what is that? That is a hands down right now trade school, right?
What is?
That, I want to be an electrical engineer.
No, you got to get a bachelor's.
Trade school.
Bachelor's.
Then you got to go to college, right?
Yeah. And I'm saying that I don't disagree with that path. I'm just saying I don't think that a private organization should be able to, should just be involved at all because they're going for profit, right? Like once you incentivize profit is the main thing. It's no longer about education. It's about getting butts in the seats and getting them to pay.
Oh, no, I completely agree. It's getting butts in the seats and don't give a fuck to pay.
Right.
You know what I deal with right now?
What?
I run a Frito-Lay factory, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What is Frito-Lay? Supply chain, correct?
Yeah.
You know who they hire straight out of Washburn University in Topeka to be a supply chain leader?
Who?
Someone with a chemical engineering degree.
Okay, that's a little weird.
What? Exactly. No, as long as they have a degree, they hire them. So these are my supervisors. And you know how much of a dick I am?
Yeah.
You have a chemical engineering degree coming to my warehouse.
Yeah.
All right.
I've been in a situation like that before, and it's kind of sucks. Man. It sucks.
I'm almost 32. I'm almost 32. I've done my job for the last 6 years. And they tell me, oh, your next supervisor is this person. Oh, okay. I'm one of the few people with balls that when my supervisor that has a chemical engineering degree tries to tell me, hey, do this, hey, do this, hey, do that. I'm like, no. You don't have a goddamn clue how my warehouse works.
Yeah. I mean, in some cases.
I will make changes accordingly, but don't try to tell me how to do my job because you just came fresh out of college. You have no idea how supply chain works, and you're going to try to tell me, oh, can you do this?
Yeah.
Well, I can, but it's going to fucking fail. and the best part about it is, after a couple weeks, they're like, okay, we understand. We'll listen to you. It's like, yeah, you got to learn to listen. Like, my job title is warehouse lead.
Yeah.
My description is to determine job classifications and make the warehouse run. You are a resource. You know what a resource does? Resource is there to be resourceful when I can't make my shit run.
Yeah.
And they learn real quick. Like they need to hire supply chain leaders. But no, 90% of the people they hire for management, they have a chemical engineering degree or this and that.
Well, there's a lot of people that get that degree, and I just don't understand. I mean, I work in a chemical plant.
What the hell do you know is what I ask them when they get there. I ask them, I said, what the hell do you know?
I mean,
I said,
anybody.
I run a warehouse. Yeah, this is
Anybody
supply
straight
chain.
out of college
What the fuck
isn't
do
going
you
to
know?
have much experience unless they've been taught by having a job beforehand. Which,
Yeah, but they put these kids in here, 19, 20 years old, and they're chemical engineers and this and that with all these fucking degrees.
yeah,
And I'm like, what do you know about my job? And they're like, well, nothing. Can you teach me?
they're just
I'm
as
like,
a
"Oh, trust me."
manager. Like they're your manager.
Yeah,
Is what
and
you're saying?
yes, they are put into our manager positions.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like whoever's staffing those
Corporate
positions is
bullshit. No, it's
not-
corporate bullshit.
Yeah, they're not getting a good or
Because
proper fit for the position.
No, they just push these kids around because they want them to be in management up higher up. So they want to give them 4 months here, 4 months here. They move them around.
Well, do you know what's kind of that's kind of a tactic anyway, and just in general industry is that I found
Exactly.
I found that
Exactly.
engineers in general don't. It's very common that they don't stick with the actual engineering path and get absorbed into management because
exactly. And
if
that's
you
why
have
I'm
an
the asshole.
engineer as a manager, then you're essentially able to pay them to do multiple jobs, and they're also more valuable if you think about it. In some cases.
Oh no, they're not doing shit. They're sitting at their desk with their thumbs up their asses.
Well, if they, I mean, your place, not at my place. I mean, I'm just saying. Like,
no, in my place they do nothing. And then when they go, oh, why didn't this work? I'm like, maybe you should leave my fucking people alone. I mean, it's bad. Like I have sat there time after time because management, they're all salaried. They're not union. They don't have shit going on. And when I put them in their place, they go, oh, I guess you're right. I'm like, yeah, I've been in this job for 6 goddamn years. So don't try to tell me when you come in here 6 months ago, you're going to try to tell me how to do my shit better than you can.
yeah.
I mean, they don't realize that.
But don't you feel like, I mean, playing devil's advocate and not obviously being in the situation, sounds like you're kind of oppositional on it anyway. So, like, if you're oppositional from the start, then there's no possibility for a win there.
No, well, see, I can't advance anymore because I don't have a college degree.
Yeah.
I make $25 an hour, and I do my job. They try to do my job, they fuck it up. So
yeah, I've got a few friends that are in the same boat, but I mean, that's. I don't think that the degree.
You just gotta know when to tell them, hey, do your fucking job and I'll do mine.
So, like, trying to keep obviously as many names out of it as I can, but like my wife's
I don't know names.
My wife's dad or my father-in-law, he doesn't, I don't think, have a degree, but he works in the engineering side over there at Roquette. And I'm just saying that I have actually worked with him personally and thought that he was proficient in his job. So
Exactly.
The whole degree
He's smarter than half them
situation-
motherfuckers that are going to try to tell him what he needs to do.
The only reason that I went and got a degree is because I had to, because my society forced me to do it in order to continue along my path. But I'll be honest, I don't really feel like I learned anything more than I had already really learned being a technician for, 8+ years or 12+ years or whatever.
Jason, you knew me the whole time I've been alive.
Yeah.
Because you're older than me, you know. You were always Ben's friend, and guess what? Damn it, you became my friend and a good fucking family member.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I fucking moved to Kansas, started at the bottom of the fucking totem pole. $13 an hour.
Yeah.
Well, within 2 years, I was up to 20. 4.5 years later, I was up to 25 or 20, 24, 55. So I'm almost 25. I do. I run an automated warehouse system.
Well, so
I
this
run the
is
whole
thing,
goddamn
dude.
thing.
This is the thing here, is like you're a perfect candidate for the thing that I'm talking about, where your pay should not be based on like this seniority thing, and certainly things should be in some cases capped, but you're a perfect case of, well, you're between a rock and a hard place. You can't really do much without this degree, right? Or this specialized education that the company is saying that you need.
Exactly, Nate. Well, that's the thing about
hold
Frito.
on.
Frito doesn't do it that way.
But hold on, let me finish here. let me finish here real quick. But you should be able to be provided this without putting yourself in major financial duress in order to get it. Like, if you're interested in learning the automation behind that warehouse or whatever, like, I specialize in automation. Like, that's my main job, and I enjoy it a lot. And I'm saying sometime probably can't happen, but that would be really cool to see that warehouse, by the way, if I ever visit. But anyway, that being said,
but look up AGVs through Dematic.
I've worked with AGVs before on a project.
But look up Dematic AGVs. Those are what I have right now. I run 16 of those automated with an automated crane system. It's fucking godly.
I'll switch to the live view here. Pneumatic automated vehicles?
Dematic. DEMATIC.
Huh, I haven't heard of that.
Dematic AGV. Yep. It's a company out of well, I'm not sure what Dematic's out of, but JMP is our automated palletizing system.
These are I've seen like these before. Dematic is the brand, is what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were speaking of the technology or whatever.
But no, they used to run off line systems. No, these are all like laser guided forklifts.
Right. So they used to. So the ones that I worked with, because they're cheaper. I mean, they had
they were all laser guided on the track.
Well, I'm saying that what I was trying to explain is the ones that I worked with were the cheaper ones, and they weren't laser guided by a track, but they had like a magnet that was installed into the concrete essentially, and it would follow this path essentially that was laid before it. But they all
mine are laser guided by the top of the machine.
Right. I've really I proposed this a number of times at my workplace for them to put in because, like you said, we've got people that sometimes it's not necessarily their fault or whatever, but they run into a pole and this and that, and it's like, dude, if we had automate or AGVs in here, we could eliminate all of these safety incidents that we have. I mean, and on top of that,
I have never had one run into anything.
Right.
In 2 years.
Yeah.
I can jump out in front of them, and they stop.
So it looks like they have a spinning. So on the very top of that pole, there's a spinning laser, essentially like those bullet levels or whatever.
Yes. Yep. That one reads all the sensors on the walls.
Yep.
So they know where they're at.
And then they have to have some directional on the front, right? Front and back.
So they also have lower sensors on the front and the back. And then also each side.
Okay.
Like if I wanted to stop, I can literally jump out in front of it. It'll never touch you.
Yep. Yeah, I looked over this technology because when I worked in this area that had a packaging area, anyway, I mean, there's 2 areas that they have to have packaging. Man, if we were to get AGV set up, it would be sweet. See, I see the spinning sensor there. Okay, I see the sensors below. And that must be your collision detection.
Yep.
But yeah. Anyway, so that's cool. But I think that we're running on 2.5 hours on this stream. I do appreciate you coming on here, but I think I'm going to end the podcast for now. But I appreciate you coming on, and I think that we should have like an actual legit conversation. Do you have a webcam or anything that you could use? You could come on and.
No, I'm simple.
Okay, just voice only, and that's it.
I said, well, I mean, we can do it on Facebook call or whatever. So
yeah, okay.
You just let me know. But like I said, it was good chatting with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to switch to the audience real quick. So if this is content that you like, please like my page on Facebook, The Smoogley. Please subscribe on YouTube. And as always, thanks for watching.
Yep. We'll catch y'all next time.